So, hello and welcome to episode 5 of Midweek Mingle. I'm your host, Corinne, and I have the absolute pleasure today to be speaking with the director of the Me Human project, which is the umbrella project which Midweek Mingle falls under, Gillian Forrester. Gilly was also on our first episode of Midweek Mingle with Trudy because she is the co-founder of the SOFAR network. So I'm very excited and pleased to say hello to the Me Human project.
It's been a steep learning curve, but I think it's been really fun to get familiarize ourselves with the technology and to start practicing these sorts of public engagement avenues to see like where we can make a difference.
And I think it can only get bigger and better after this. And we'll speak a little bit more about that at the end. But really what we want to focus on today is what you do, how you got there. You have such an interesting field, and I'll let you take that away and just tell us more about what you do and who you are, and just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, sure. So I am a doctor of psychology. I have a PhD in experimental psychology, and I suppose I would call myself an evolutionary and developmental psychologist, although we can argue about what people should be called. It's really confusing. There are so many people basically name themselves, but let's put it that way. Once you get into studying at a particular niche area of research, you can create your own niche name, which is kind of fun. But basically, I am a research scientist. So I'm an academic. I work at a university. I'm at Birkbeck, University of London. I'm in the Department of Psychological Sciences, and my day-to-day job is conducting a program of research in addition to teaching and admin and public engagement, which we'll talk about more later. But the research side of my job is that I've developed a program of research where I investigate the way that humans became the way that we are today. So how did we evolve our really interesting, complex, sophisticated skills that make us stand out from other animal species? And also, how do those skill sets develop in babies who are born into modern human families? Like how do we get to be the kinds of great apes that we are today? And one of the ways that I study this is that I can compare modern human behaviors with our closest living relatives' behaviors. And those are the other great apes, because of course we are great apes too. And understanding our shared behaviors and what we might have inherited from a last common ancestor versus what we think we might have developed ourselves unique to humans after we split from a last common ancestor. Those are kind of the areas that I'm most interested in. And so to do that, I have to study humans and other great ape species like chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, and children, all within the same sort of experimental paradigms. That's really, really fun and exciting. So that's what I spend most of my time doing, running
And
around watching how kids and gorillas behave.
and what would you say, studying children and great apes, are there a lot of similarities? Are there a lot of differences? Do you use different methods? Are there certain methods you can transferable?
So there's a long history of comparing humans and other great ape species. Um, I'm trying to change the direction of some of that, because the kind of entrenched perspective has been that, oh, other animals, we should compare them to the kinds of behaviors that we do today. So let's try to teach chimpanzees to speak, or let's teach
Okay.
them human sign language. And if they can't do it, well, then they're just not as clever as we are. But the fact of the matter is that different animals evolve in their own ecological niches with the behaviors that they need to be adaptive and survive in that particular environment. So human language just may not be an important behavior for apes to survive in their natural habitats, whereas now for humans, it absolutely is. And
That sort
maybe
of ties back to what we were speaking last week with Dr. Ameline Bardo about the size of the hand and how it's evolved in different species to sort of do what you're doing today.
yeah,
It's
fit the
really amazing.
needs of that species to survive and thrive in that environment. So I guess what's important to me is that I can look at the behaviors that apes have in common with humans. So like we are all tool users. We share some food preparation behaviors with other apes. We share some of our communication capabilities, like the way we um, change whether or not we gesture or vocalize based on if the other person's attending to us or not. So if their
Oh,
back is turned to us, it's no point in me doing a big old gesture. So like apes understand that too, and we're really good and flexible with the way we use our communication channels. So those sorts of things, like where we have commonalities, then I can conclude that our common ancestor way back when had that as well and passed it down to us, and that those behaviors might be precursors, the kinds of behaviors that set us up for more sophisticated behaviors that we have today. And so trying to like disentangle what are the things that set us up to become modern humans, what were the things that we built on top of and made even more fancy and complicated and sophisticated. Those are the things that I'm most interested in.
so that's such a incredible, almost like a niche in the psychology field. You don't generally hear of people who study babies and chimpanzees together. Was that always something you wanted to do, or was that something you sort of found your way into? And if so, how did you find your way into that?
That's a good question. I was fascinated with chimpanzees from a young age, like I think 8 years old and up, but I didn't know that I'd work with them. It was just, I was, if they were on the television or if they were photographs or if I went to a zoo or something, like the chimpanzees just fascinated me. And I think it was because they sit in that uncanny valley area of like you can look at them and you can project they must think like me, they look like me, they have the same kind of hands that I have, they have opposable
Feet.
thumbs like me. Look, they've got families and all this sort of thing, and I think I was always wanting to know what they were thinking, like how did their thoughts work, and did they have emotions like I do, and do they have desires and wishes for the future? Do they remember things in the past? And how are we related, not just through our DNA, but through the way we navigate our worlds? And so that stuck with me. And I got interested in psychology, but psychology from kind of the neuroscientific perspective of how do brains work, and how does brain function manifest as behavior. And so that kind of set me on a trajectory, but I had no idea that there were jobs where you could go and work with great apes from a research perspective. I thought if you wanted to work with apes, you were probably a zookeeper, or maybe you were a tour guide or something in a wild animal park. So I had no idea. So I think it's a shame that kids in school don't get exposed to the myriad of possibilities that there are in science, because the infrastructure for education is very much like, this is biology, this is psychology. You might get psychology, but it's probably all about human stuff. It's very little about how humans and other animals are connected. And so I was surprised and thrilled actually to find that there's a space for this kind of research to go on, where we can look at the cognitive the similarities and differences in the brains and behaviors of other animals and humans together as one sort of research area.
It's so interesting how you've combined this multidisciplinary field and just created your own little area. Do you think that all the areas that in future are going to be studied have been discovered? Do you think there are more possibilities of combining them? I'm just
Um,
thinking from a perspective of someone who might have two completely different interests, and we're sort of always taught to choose one, but
yeah.
really you've showed us you can find your way into that middle path.
Yeah, I think some of the most exciting advances are not about creating new areas, but creating interactions between different areas that already exist. So there's this tendency to be kind of like, this is my field, I'm in this box. I don't talk to the people over here who are in a peripheral field that might be vaguely connected, but I wouldn't think about that. It's the ones that you think about not being connected at all that are the most interesting to bring together. And I think when you step outside of your box and you start to talk to other people, maybe they're studying philosophy, maybe they're studying sociology, maybe social psychology, but or biology. There's so many different areas, and I think what I didn't know about studying psychology as a science that I do today is that actually it involves not just science, it involves art, creativity, architecture, development, all of these really fascinating things that skills that you get to develop along the way that make it hugely entertaining to carry out research. Um, so no, I think it would have been lovely to kind of know these things were possibilities earlier on. I found my way probably quite slowly towards the stuff that I want to do, and I still feel like I'm very much at the beginning of what I want to be a much longer research career. Um, but it's fantastic to know that there is a space for it, and I think it's hugely important as well to the wider world, the impact of this kind of research to the wider world.
So I've seen a bit of your research and I've seen some pictures of you working directly with the great apes and the monkeys and the children. And so, sort of, what I want to ask is there's a stigma that as a scientist, you have to be super nerdy and sit in a lab and crunch data all day, and you never get to talk to anyone and you never have any social interaction. How do we sort of break this stigma and show people that there is so much more to the wider world?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right there. It's something that we need to dispel this, um, you know, mystery, the mysterious science that you have to be super geek as well. Psychology is an interesting way into science to start with, in that you don't actually have to have studied science to go into psychology as an undergraduate program. So it can set you on your way to a science career without having had to have a foundation in science to begin with. And that's quite nice, because particularly in England, where you're forced to choose your subject areas very early and very young, you might feel, I've missed the boat, I can't do science now, it's too late. When actually, if you look at psychology as a science, and it very much is a science in many institutions, you can become a neuroscientist without having studied biology or chemistry at the A level. I think it's important that people know, particularly younger people, know that they haven't missed the boat, and they can go back to it. And you don't have to be a chemistry wizard or a maths wizard to be able to study psychology either. Of course, it does take some regimented thinking and some uh, keenness to detail, learning new methodologies and approaches, and some statistical analyses and stuff, like this all comes along with it. But they're all learned in the context of actually doing the research. So I feel like it's very much practical skill sets that you are learning, and because they are attached to something that you are actually doing at the time, they make sense, and I don't, they're not. They're not incredibly dislocated from the work that you're doing. So I think that you don't have to be a super geek, but like I said, you do need to adopt a scientific approach once you start into doing some research. But it's so interesting in that it incorporates all of these other aspects as well, including the creative side of experimental development.
I think another thing is you're never too old to start. I think that's something I've learned over the past few weeks talking to these different scientists is you're never too young and you're never too old to start your career. And even if you feel like you've missed the boat, there is still that opportunity into it. And
Oh, absolutely true. And you'll know that as well as anybody, being a student at Birkbeck, because we are a very unique in that we offer a bachelor's programs in the evening for people who already have a career or maybe haven't studied recently and want to come to university to study for the first time or after a long break, which means that about 50% of our undergraduate cohorts are mature students. And I've had students who've started their undergraduate degree in their 40s and their 50s and even older, who go on to have incredibly valuable careers in psychology, at the later stages of their lives. And absolutely love it and wouldn't have traded it for anything. So never, it's never too late.
I sort of want to highlight what you said previously about that skills that you learn on the way, and that keenness to detail and that determination. And you really don't have to have this whole bunch of knowledge. You don't have to have a big rucksack full of knowledge of science. You just have to have that keenness to learn, that determination, and you create your own path, and that's so wonderful. It's incredible. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, what is good science? So it's interesting because you read a lot of papers, and I think as an undergrad we learn a lot about not just trusting any source, not trusting just any paper. So what is good science? How do you sort of develop good science practice, and what makes sort of a good scientist?
Gosh, a really good question too. One of the first things I tell my undergraduates when they come to study with us is that just because it's published doesn't mean it's good. I think there's a real tendency to believe that if something is published, it's been vetted, like it's good science. And that is absolutely not the case. And so part of the way of working out and understanding what good science is to adopt a critical eye. So we do a lot of work with critical analysis, and critical doesn't mean find all the bad things. Critical analysis means let's find the bad things, let's find the good things and weigh them up and see how good this piece of research is. And you're never going to have a piece of research that's perfect, because you can never control for all of the various confounds in any one study. But what you can do is ask a straightforward, simple research question that has good rationale behind it. So generally we try to teach students to don't just pick a question out of thin air because you think it's interesting. Pick something out that has there's some reason why you're asking it. So there's a body of research before that's built up and created a theory around this thing that suggests one thing and you want to test that, or you disagree with that because there's another body of research that contrasts with it and suggests something else and you want to compare the two. All of that's fine, like these, but then make your questions simple and then create a study that is as simple as you can to test that thing. I think that one of the other perceptions that people get is that if it's science, it's got to be complicated.
And it's got to include all these different things, and then
Yeah,
by the end of your research, you don't really know what you're looking at anymore.
exactly. Some of the best work I've seen, and I try to stick by this with my own research and when I write my research up as well, is that the simpler the better. So if I can ask a straightforward question, test it in a simple manner, and interpret it in the most simplistic fashion, that's the best way to get your message across. And also for you to understand yourself what's going on and try to push the field forward.
Also, something that I've learned throughout my undergrad is replicating studies. I thought replicating studies was the bane of my existence as a first and second year. If I have to do the Stroop test one more time, I thought, oh my goodness. But then, sort of, as you develop in your career, you also realize that we have a bit of a replicability crisis in psychology, and it's so important that we do these studies multiple times using different, environments, different people, and making sure that what we find is true and valid. I think that's so important as well when
Yep. Yep.
considering
So those
studies.
patterns that come out, if lots and lots of people do it, and they've maybe done it slightly different ways and slightly different analyses, but you're still getting the same results out, the same pattern of results, then you can be more um, sure that actually is a real thing and not just some sort of spurious result for who knows what reason.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good science is difficult to come by, but once you get some good science, it's incredible. You talked about a lot about simplicity. What if there are people who sort of younger people, older people, they wake up and they have this crazy idea of something they want to do? How would you sort of direct them and sort of almost have them break their big idea into smaller steps and continue on from that?
I think with project students, I often get project students coming in and wanting to do something incredibly complicated and convoluted. And it's about talking through actually what is the question? What is the question and why are you asking it? So you need to be able to answer the kind of the W's, the what, where, why, when sort of questions. And if you can answer those concisely, then you can move forward because you'll have already distilled it down into its kind of purest form. So you're going to get rid of any of the kind of distracting information around and go, what actually is it that you want to ask and why? So those are the most important things. And generally, when you can answer those, it's a much more straightforward process then of testing it and analyzing it and interpreting it.
So you are busy not only with your research, you're also a lecturer and director of undergrad studies at Birkbeck. You have all these little bits going on. And then you also started the Me Human project. So I just want to sort of pick your brain about what was your idea behind it and how did this project come about?
Cool. Yeah, I think there were several driving forces behind the Me Human project. One is that I'm passionate about public engagement and science communication. I feel like there's still this sense of if you say scientist to somebody, one they think man, two they think white coat, crazy hair, um, and they think that you have to, like we talked about before, be very much educated in the sciences all the way through your education to be able to go that route. And so I kind of wanted to dispel some of these preconceived notions. Well, when you don't have to be a man, women are just as good at science, but sometimes we're put off of taking that route just because of social biases. And also, I think that there's this kind of sense that you have to be really clever to understand science. And if you're not, don't bother because that's for an exclusive group of people. And I think that's ridiculous. And I hate that preconceived notion. And I don't think we should perpetuate it. I think what we should be doing is taking the essence of the research and sharing that with the wider public all the time, because so much of it is useful and so much of it is digestible by anybody. And part of our job as scientists should be to create a way that everyone can understand our work. If everyone can't understand our work, what's the point actually, really, right? It needs to be able to be disseminated to a wider community than just our colleagues. And so that was one of the driving forces. Another one of the driving forces is that the Me Human project is specifically related to understanding ourselves within a natural world. So there's been a history of studying humans, our brains and behaviors in isolation of other animal species, like we are special and divorced from the natural world. And I have a huge passion for understanding actually what is our place in the natural world. How did we get here? How did we get to be the kinds of humans that we are today? And what is our link to other animals? Because currently we all know we're in a situation where we're rapidly destroying the environment around us to the point where we are endangering the populations of so many incredible species, including all those great ape species that I'm so interested in studying and who are our closest living relatives. So Me Human is very much here to help people understand our place in the natural world and to promote conservation and protection and education around biodiversity and just largely conservation.
So this is once again you've taken all these different fields and just brought them in together into this wonderful project. And this project has so many different avenues, and it's really interesting. I feel like all sorts of different scientists and public in general can find somewhere where they can learn something from it, and that's the goal of the project. All right, so you have you're lecturing, you're director of undergrad studies, you've got all these things happening. What's your next big thing that's happening?
Few next big things happening, as always. One of the next big projects that we're looking to get funded is one where we will bring together research and education into a single package. And this would be doing what we call citizen science collaboration. So we know that scientists go into their little laboratories and they do their lab work and they get the results and they publish them in papers, and the scientific community reads them, and hopefully somebody does some public engagement with them and spells that information, disseminates that to the wider public. But what my next project is about, getting the community to help do the research itself. But while they're doing it, they're also learning about animal behavior, conservation, biodiversity, and our place in the natural world. So we're looking at creating a set of modules for school children, so kind of secondary school children, where they get to not only learn about endangered species, but they also are going to be doing the data collection. So they're going to be doing animal behavior projects where they get live stream footage of animal behavior from different apes in our partners, zoos and wild field sites, and they get to do the coding, looking out for particular behaviors, trying to code that behavior, and all of that data goes towards research projects where the students are actually contributors to the research itself. They get to contribute to the publications that then go in for journal submissions, and then they're also going to help disseminate the information to their local communities. So you're kind of putting the students at the heart of the research and also at the heart of the dissemination process. And I'd like to see that kind of thing rolled out nationally. And so that's a big plan.
We were talking a little bit about how we wish we knew about all these different fields when we were younger. And I think it's important to mention that this is such an amazing opportunity for those children to get first-hand experience and learn about these different fields and get to know these different skills before they even go into a field of science.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like, if you can get some hands-on practical knowledge of these sorts of things early on, and also just by understanding our place in the natural world, you might start asking your own questions about our own psychology, our brains, our behaviors, and where they come from. So you might be breeding sort of young scientists much earlier in the process, rather than sticking them into these pre-established boxes of chemistry, biology, and physics. So yes, that's exactly our hope.
Right. So that project is called the Ice Cube Project. And if anyone who's listening want to find more information, they can find it on our website. So I'll put the website in the link below. So the Ice Cube Project, that's a massive project that's happening. How are you sort of planning on getting a role on that? Because that's quite an interesting thing. Where do you start with such a big project?
Sorry, how do I start getting...
Yeah, so how do you start at getting the ball rolling on such a big project? And how did you get this idea? Where did this project come from?
So the project conception was conversations with several colleagues, again, from very different areas of psychology. So not only are we looking at the education process and the citizen science, but how does that make you feel, and what does that do for your mental health to be involved in in these research projects, and also then being able to take active roles in conservation efforts if it also improves people's mental well-being. So it came about through talks with Trudy Edgington, who's a clinical psychologist, Professor Ben Garrett, who is an evolutionary biologist and also BBC presenter. Also my postdoc, Georgie Donati, who's done a lot of work in education and also conservation and philosophy and neuroscience, and has worked with adolescents. So it kind of has been formulating over time. And we work with a lot of schools with the Me Human project already. So knowing that actually there's an appetite for learning about less conventional areas of science and bring them into the mainstream. There's an appetite for it. So, like I said, it's a project that's coming together. We're hoping for funding. I'm optimistic about it because I think it's a fabulous idea. It's a very, very collaborative project across many, many different partners and schools. So, yes, I wouldn't want to take a complete conceptual ownership of it. It's been an evolving process.
I think it's quite interesting to mention as well, it's that importance of networking with people from other fields and coming together, and really that openness to learn from others that might be completely different field to yours.
Yeah, I've learned so much by speaking to people outside of my field and learning new perspectives and also new approaches to the work that I want to do. It's opened up a huge number of opportunities to work with different kinds of people, and also incredibly enhanced my own research and also the way I teach my students. So all that stuff trickles into the curriculum too. So, when we're teaching our students at university, all of the experiences that I have, I want to pass on in some way to the students. And yeah, I think it benefits everyone all around.
Then we also have a very exciting project coming very soon. So would you like to tell them about that, Gilly?
Oh, yes. So yes, I've been tasked, but I don't think of it as a task. I think of it as an honor, to spearhead Birkbeck Science Week this year. And as I do with wanting to make everything bigger than it originally is, Birkbeck Science Week is now a Science Month. And because of COVID, we are online. But every Saturday in May, Corinne and I will be interviewing together, which is very exciting. We'll be interviewing together two speakers from the School of Science at Birkbeck. There are short talks, they're public pitch talks, so it's science for anyone and everyone. And it is streamed live on YouTube every Saturday at 10:30 in the morning. Two short talks followed by live discussion with audience participation. So we're really excited about this. We're actually partnering with the National Saturday Club, who are 13 to 16-year-olds who are being exposed to higher education for the first time. And next year, we're going to get some of these incredible youths to come and help us do the interviewing and get more involved as well. So yes, so a whole month, 5 Saturdays in May. So that's 10 talks. And we've got those all posted on Birkbeck's website. And I think, Corinne, you can share
I'll share the link as well. I just wanted to mention some of the talk topics that are going to come on just to spark some interest. We have Life on Earth and Beyond. So that will be quite interesting. I think there's a lot of news right now around artificial intelligence and intelligent life in the universe.
Few short talks under that title.
Yes. So human evolution and climate change, and then intelligent life in the universe. So that would be very exciting. We have the microcosm, and that is public transport inside our cells. Ooh. And we also have antibodies versus viruses, which is very accurate to the current situation. Yep. We have nature and nurture, the good old question that everyone asks. That would be really interesting. And those talks will be what makes you you, and pollutants in our air. So it'd be interesting to find out how those connect.
Yeah, isn't that the coughing up the lung talk?
Yes, very, very interesting. We then have Mind the Mind, which is the biology and culture of psychiatric disorders.
I'm so interested in that one. So that's our colleague and fellow evolutionary psychologist Simon Green. And I think what's going to be really fascinating about that talk is that Simon is going to be discussing what we consider to be disorders and how that might change based on your cultures and the biological and cultural perspectives. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
And Simon Green gives some fantastic lectures. That is definitely one I wouldn't want to miss. And then on that same day, we have Uta Liersch, who was on the podcast just 2 weeks ago, and making resilience work for you. So that's going to be interesting. And then the last talk is becoming human. And so you're actually giving the first talk of that day, the left brain, right brain, the evolution of the divided brain, which has also been a very well discussed topic, which I'm excited to hear more about.
It's received a lot of pop science perspectives. So I want to kind of dispel some of the pop science and tell you what actually happens and if there really is a left-right divide and what it means for us as modern humans.
And that's so funny, but as a psychology student, that's the question I get asked the most is there really a left and right brain? So it's definitely something to watch out for.
There are two sides.
And then Natasha Kirkman does the last talk, Growing Up in the Middle of Everything, which is going to be fantastic as well. We're definitely very excited for the Saturdays, and we'll post the link below.
Yeah. Even if you can't join live on the day, those are going to be recorded and there and available to watch. I would say that they're going to be great for schools. They're going to be great for university students. They're great, for families to listen to together. They're going to be really friendly and, like I said, publicly pitched. So I really hope that we get lots of people tuning into those.
Definitely. And the other thing is it's going to be so fantastic because there's such a wide variety of scientists who are coming together to do this talk, and so there is really something for everyone, and it's very accessible. I've had lectures from most of these scientists and they've all been incredible lectures, easy to understand,
and that's why they are the ones that we are going to spend the time with to showcase research that's going on currently at Birkbeck. And give everybody kind of a better understanding of what is the School of Science and who are we. I'm really excited for that whole event.
And then that is, do you have anything else coming up? You have a few other projects in the Me Human repertoire?
We've got lots of things going on all the time. So, we're waiting for festivals to come back round. I'm excited to announce that we are definitely going back to Norwich Science Festival, a whole day of Me Human live science and talks in October. But yeah, watch this space for more information on that as it unfolds and pandemic allowing, of course. But yes, all updates will be on the website, so you can always check in there, or social media, Twitter.
No, yeah, I will link the social media down below. So that's the Twitter, the Instagram, and the website, and we'll keep you all updated with everything going on. Gilly, is there any last thoughts?
I just want everyone to stay happy and healthy, and I can't wait to be back, doing our science communication work, and also being back out there doing the hands-on research with the kids and the gorillas and the chimps and orangutans. So hopefully very soon.
Hopefully very soon. So I've had the honour to speak to Dr. Gillian Forrester today. She's an evolutionary and developmental psychologist at Birkbeck, University of London. We've spoken about how weird and wonky your career field could be and might be, and how to find your own niche. We've got loads of exciting plans for the future. Thank you so much for joining me today, Gilly. It's been absolute pleasure to have you. And yeah, watch this space and this platform. There's loads of exciting things happening. So I'm your host, Corinne, and stay safe.